Welcome back to another ComCon Virtual 2020 session. This time I've got Perry from Teluu with me. Teluu are one of our platinum sponsors, and this is a session that we decided to do with our platinum sponsors for you to be able to get to know them better. They are what make the conference happen. Without platinum sponsors kind of giving us a ton of money at the very beginning to go, yep, we're interested in supporting this. This is a good idea. Without them, we don't start everything up. We don't start planning because we don't know whether or not we can actually run the conference. So without people like Perry saying yes, absolutely, this doesn't happen. And all of the content this year is completely and utterly free of charge on YouTube. You're watching it right now. And again, without sponsors kind of going, yes, let's cover the cost of all of this, then trying to reclaim costs for a virtual conference, which is very, very different to what ComCon is at the essence of it all, normally, is very, very difficult. So let's stop baffling on and listening to me talk about ComCon and what it was in the past. And let's talk about Teluu. So welcome, Perry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So first off, I mean, I want to hear more about you and your background and why you started a company, why you run a company in the UK, and then we'll get on to Teluu.
Yeah, so as Dan said, thank you very much for the invitation to become a sponsor in the first place. And so my name is Perry Ismangil, as Dan said. I currently live in Sheffield, UK. And yeah, I started this company a while back while actually I was still employed, and there's a friend wanting to start a software company. And I said, hey, can I join? And then yeah, a few decade a bit later, and I'm still here.
Wow. So did you start the business, co-found the business in the UK? It was a UK business at the very beginning of it all.
Yeah. At the beginning, it was I have a uni friend, go to the same uni as me. He was living in London. I was living in Sheffield. I was working as a normal, corporate programmer at the time, and I was just catching up with him. He said, hey, what you doing? I said, I have the software. I'm thinking of selling it. And then I said, let me in. And then said, I was looking for a business guy. So why don't you do that? And then, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So what does Teluu actually do? I first got introduced to Teluu because of the pjsip project. The Asterisk project was looking for a new SIP stack to replace their old kind of legacy big monolithic thing, and they were looking around, and there were options kind of banded around on the mailing list at the time, and that was my first introduction to the pjsip project, and then therefore Teluu. But most people probably haven't heard of Teluu, but have heard of the PJ project. So can you tell us a little bit about Teluu itself and what you all do?
Yeah, so Teluu came about from the project itself. So back then, this was around 2005-ish. This friend of mine was dissatisfied with the current SIP libraries available at the time. And as with any programmer, if you're dissatisfied with something, I can do better. And he did try to do better. And so he wrote by mostly himself. I mean, the original code, there are still hundreds of thousands of lines of code written by him back in 2005. So when I met him around 2006, that was almost 14 years ago now. He said he's trying to sell this. It's all this because and then I said I want in. And so he was living in London at the time. He was working and living in London, and then he quit his job and started doing this full time. I didn't go full time because I wasn't sure this will work initially. So that was back in 2006. And then we formed a company to basically sell the licensing and support around the open source project. He already decided it was an open source project from the very beginning. It was a GPL license from the get-go, and then we created a business around it. Currently, and then it grew from that, and then we hired a few more programmers. Currently, we have another 3 full-time developers, basically, maintaining and always expanding and always making better pjsip.
Cool. Okay. I mean, you mentioned there about licensing and support. How does a business kind of make money from open source software, but still have this underlying kind of thought process of this is open source. This is how it should be. Is it just licensing? Is it just support? What other avenues does Teluu go down to make money and be profitable?
Yeah, so early on, this was the early 2000s, and one of the way there was a couple of way people were trying at the time. So the way we decided was we're going to basically sell support for the people who needed support, but also the other stream we have is actually correlated is the licensing. We also the dual what people sometimes people call it dual licensing, and then I heard a lecture by Richard Stallman in FOSDEM one year. This was a few years ago now when he appeared in FOSDEM, and he was calling it, oh yeah, you're selling license exceptions, which meaning by which you mean GPL exceptions. So we charge for people wanting a different license than the GPL. So that's one other revenue we have besides. And then along with that, we sell direct email support, for example. So they reach our developers directly, and obviously they know the ins and outs. For the rest of the open source user, we do the usual open source way of supporting, which is basically a community forum. It's a mailing list, but most things are now moving to things like Stack Overflow, for example. So those are the open source people congregate there, and also sometimes, obviously now, conferences like the ASRICon, the ASRI DevCon. Yes, I think it's called ASRI DevCon. And then there are a few other conferences like this Camaillo World. I think yes, Camaillo World. That's usually in Berlin. And yes, so things like that.
Cool. Okay. I mean, you were the first ever sponsor for ComCon, which I think is pretty remarkable. A small-ish business in the UK supporting another small-ish business in the UK, kind of with this wacky, crazy idea. I remember, I mean, we didn't know each other very well back then. This was 3 years ago now, over 3 years ago, because I was planning the first ComCon for it felt like eternity. So it's probably 3.5, 4 years ago that we kind of started talking about sponsorship and ComCon, and I remember putting out a tweet going, okay, who's interested? Like, here's a rough idea of what I want to do. Who's interested? And from what I remember, you emailed me back or replied to me on Twitter within minutes going, yep, we're in. What do you want? I think that's absolutely remarkable. So that was the first one, especially like the first one. Everyone took a punt on this crazy, wacky idea. What was it about that first ComCon that you said, yeah, we want to be a part of this?
Yeah, obviously it's still about at the end of the day, it's still about marketing. So over the years, as a small company, so I'd say we probably only about 5 people ourselves, and we never grew beyond that, even in the past many years, because we've decided to focus on one product, which is the pjsip itself, and keep bettering that. And we feel if we expand that beyond that, and we have to scale up in a certain way, we don't want to. So we are a smallish company, and I look at various opportunities at marketing and so forth. And beyond the usual, you will be found by Google. And that's what we do. And it's nice. Open source software let you do that, because things like open source project websites actually rank high by default, I think, in Google searches. They're not considered spammy. They're not considered underhand, so they rank high. So we usually get found by people looking for SIP technical features, for example, rather than commerciality. And then obviously, as a small company, I was looking into sponsorship opportunities, and obviously begin with the big thing, even like Astricon. They're like, enterprise level, and so forth and so forth. And related to Astricon, I'll tell you a story as well. It relates to sort of why I decided to back you, for example. I think I actually know about you from an Astri DevCon that I attended once. I don't attend Astri DevCon that regularly, and I was trying it out. I want to see what Astricon like. So I took Astricon, I see Astri DevCon, and then you were speaking at Astricon, or even Astri DevCon, or both, I forgot. And I said, okay, so this guy, and I saw you talk and so forth. And then I started following you, and that's about it, really. So that's why I know you, or I know you're active in there. So there you go, a tip for everyone. Speaking like that gets you the exposure.
Go stand up somewhere, go talk, and it gets you noticed enough to be able to get sponsorship on three conferences. That's cool. I've got a lot to thank the Asterisk project for in general. Open source software really does kind of bring together all of these different people and communities, and enable things like this to happen.
Yeah. So after that, I've started going to Astricon. In the end, turned out to be it's not quite, because it's more on it's just pjsip, but it's like really down below and so forth. So they still use it at this time, and they're really good licensee of ours, Digium and now Sangoma, and we have a very good relationship with the developers like Joshua and others. And then I started going to finding other things like Carmilio World. So that's okay, and that's closer. So I don't really like traveling that far. So even to America, which is not that far, but still far. So Berlin, I keep going there. I go first them in Berlin, and so there's no UK based thing. And I was considering sponsoring Carmilio World actually a few times, but somehow just never got around to it. And then that's about that time when I want to start a UK based open source thing. I suppose if you had said this would be sort of like a Londony style, UC, I don't know whether it's appropriate, UC style conference, which happens a lot in London, which is also not my thing. I couldn't really, I was just past it. But because you propose it as a UK-based open source thing, and I was thinking already about sponsoring a Berlin-based thing, why not take a punt on this one instead? So cool. That's really the UK-based open source real-time communications. That's all my keywords.
My marketing worked great. So, I mean, that was the first year. I guess what makes you keep coming back? What do you actually really get from ComCon? Like this year, previous years, they're face-to-face in beautiful locations in the UK. And this year is completely different because of the pandemic. And we're having to do everything remotely this year. So I guess, firstly, what made you come back to the second year? and then what made you kind of go, well, it's a completely different experience? Like you said, like it's the primary reason you came in the first place was because it was a UK open source conference, whereas this year it's not really a UK conference. It might be organised and run from the UK, but it's entirely different. So, why did you come back last year? And B, what made you decide to go from a gold sponsorship last year to a platinum this year that is completely and utterly different?
So while it was the residential aspect of it, was actually quite unique, even in the other conferences I attended. Things like Camellia World is just I don't mean just. It's a perfectly good conference with good social programs, but you decide to do it differently with a totally enclosed residential aspect, and you took over a hotel. Basically, that's your thing. So that was for the 2 years running. It was a totally different. For the first year running, it was a totally different atmosphere, and I like it very much. And I got to mingle a lot more with the people in that kind of environment. So that was good. So we decided to come back the next year as well for that reason. And it was a both year, I think a success. So for this year, yes, we don't have the residential aspect of it. That's sad in one way. But another thing about my company, which our company, is actually that we're also a remote company. So we're a remote first company since the very beginning. We don't have an office. All our developers work from their own home. Currently, we have 3 in Indonesia and 1 in Singapore, and I work from home, obviously here in Sheffield, in the UK. So when the pandemic started, for example, I was already working from home, so that doesn't bother us at all. So we don't have to do anything special in that. So on the other hand, I was also keen on remote working, remote first companies, and I've seen the benefit of it, and I follow as a side professional interest. I also follow people like Automatic, for example, the makers of WordPress, or Atlassian, or GitLab, which are all Zapier, which are all remote companies. So I follow them. So with the pandemic going, obviously things are forced to go remote, like conferences. So now the punt is on the other one. Let's see if Dan can make a better online conference than just putting on a Zoom call somewhere. And then the reason for the going platinum, for example, I don't know whether you want to edit this out or not. It's just that the platinum is even cheaper than the gold before.
Yes. I mean, I'm fine with you with leaving this in. It is. But I mean, I had to take a look at pricing for sponsorships, and it's figuring out the right levels, and you get less. You do get less face-to-face time with people because it's a virtual thing, and
I understand.
And the fact that you everyone's at home or everyone's at work, and so you get less of people's attention. So I don't know whether or not it's one big experiment, really. So I thank you for taking another chance on me. Well, we're coming to a close. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Perry, about open source software or ComCon, or state of anything? This is your time to say anything you want.
Yeah, so open source has been going on a long time now. Even about 10 years ago, there was a tweet that surfaced from me. I was quoting, I was retweeting or quoting Matt Asai, which is a sort of well-known. He's now in Amazon, I think, but he originally started also. He was big on open source and so forth. So he said, this was 10 years ago now. He said like 85% of enterprises use open source, and the other 15% are lying. So that's the interest for me in still open source. And again, in 2020, we see how open source is basically there's no enterprise running anywhere without open source. So that's still, and I'm still big on that. And with this pandemic going remote, I hope people also see the benefits of remote working and see they don't put down the. For example, if any of people watching this and see, oh, I noticed a higher productivity when people do remote work, and don't put that down to just a fluke or just a, just what, but measure it yourself and see whether remote work and remote things work.
Right. Nimble Ape is my business is completely and utterly remote, and I love going and seeing clients, but and having that face to face time. But I could never go back and work in an office, and I like to say that I'm as productive or more productive than someone in an office. So yeah, lessons to be learned for everyone because of being forced to change. So I want to say thank you for again being a platinum sponsor this year.
Thank you too.
Everyone should head over to Riot, riot.comcon.xyz. There's a sponsor room for Teluu where you can go and ask Perry questions. There'll be a Q&A after this session if you want to talk to Perry, and you can do it as a one-on-one thing or whatever suits you. We can go and have a group call after this and talk about Teluu, talk about ComCon, talk about the history, talk about open source, and then you can go off and talk one-on-one with Perry about any opportunities that you want to talk to him about. So that just leaves me to say thank you again, and we'll see you for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan, for the opportunity.
Don't go anywhere quite yet, though. We've got to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Without them, none of this would have even happened in the first place. So for our platinum sponsors, we've got Teluu, Voxbone, and Ciara. For our gold sponsors, we've got the Matrix Foundation, Vonage, Sangoma, Telviva, and Loway. Our silver sponsors are Aptosay, Pion, Telco Bridges with ProSBC, Avoxy, 8x8 with Jitsi, and FirstCom Europe. Then we've also got community sponsors, QXIP and Cycor Systems. Without any of them, this would never have even happened. You wouldn't have had all of this free content on YouTube. So go say thank you to all of them. Go look at what they provide, what services they offer, and have a conversation with them all over on Riot, riot.comcon.xyz. The link will be in the description below, along with links to all of our sponsors. You can go and watch preview videos from all of our gold sponsors right now over on YouTube. The links will be somewhere over here. All I've got to say is thank you to all of our sponsors, and I'll see you over on the Q&A shortly. Cheers.